Om Mukham Karoti Vachalam Bhangam Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Bande Paramananda Madhavam. I salute that Madhava, the source of supreme bliss, whose grace makes the dumb eloquent and the cripple cross mountains. So today's topic is motivation. Now, Vivekananda considered the Gita as a sort of a character building manual, and he quoted it frequently, and I think you'd have to say he was sort of a devotee of the Gita because he cracked this code, which seems to have laid dormant in the majority of in India for quite a long time, like perhaps even hundreds of years. And he made it then accessible to everyone again. Everyone meaning the entire world, not just India. So at some point, I would like to talk perhaps about, not today, but about his formulation of the idea of karma yoga. Today we're just going to talk about motivation, and I want to begin with reference to the Mahabharata, which I frequently do. So, on the topic of motivation, in the Mahabharata, the blind king, Dhritarashtra, wants his line to be the dynasty of Hastinapur at any cost. He wavers, though, but that's what he wants. Duryodhana, his son, wants the throne at every cost. Bhishma, that is the grandsire, the oldest Kuru that everyone revered very much, he wants things to be other than they are. And therefore he's very frustrated. Draupadi, who is the common wife of the 5 Pandavas, wants revenge for the super insults she had to endure from the Kauravas. Shakuni, the evil brother-in-law of King Dhritarashtra, while teaching the younger Duryodhana how to be sneaky and hard to handle by his elders, Shakuni also secretly harbors the goal of bringing the whole Kuru clan to ruin. No one would really guess that was his ultimate motive, but it was. In the end, King Dhritarashtra and his son Duryodhana both fail in their aims. Bhishma, the grandsire, is still frustrated. Draupadi gets her revenge, and Shakuni succeeds in eliminating and dethroning the Kurus, but at the cost of his own death. So as far as motivation goes, the evil guy is successful. You'll notice that I did not mention the Pandavas very much, who were the rightful heirs, to the country of Hastinapur. But that's because they had Lord Krishna on their side, who taught them the great secret of motiveless action. So that's what we're talking about today. First, I want to start with, in this world of relativity, which is called the karma bhumi in the Mahabharata, that is the place or the world where you work out your karma, or the place of action. we need to accomplish things here, no, unquestionably, to maintain our existence. So I have found a few quotes from some of these people. I don't even know exactly who they are, but anyway, they have some fairly good things to say. Because in the world, you do need to have some degree of purpose in the world of relativity. The old lesson, this is by W.M. Pushan, whoever he was. The old lesson, a worthy purpose, patient energy for its accomplishment, a resoluteness undaunted by difficulties, and then success. By T.T. Munger, there is no road to success but through a clear, strong purpose. Nothing can take its place. A purpose underlies character, culture, position, and attainment of every sort. Carlyle, who is very well known, of course, in England, says, "Someone without a purpose is like a ship without a rudder, a waif, a nothing, a no man. Have a purpose in life, and having it, throw such strength of mind and muscle into your work as God has given you." And he also says, "The block of granite, which is an obstacle in the pathway of the weak, becomes a stepping stone in the pathway of the strong." And furthermore, he says, a person, this is Carlyle, with a half volition, goes backwards and forwards and makes no way on the smoothest road. Someone with a whole volition advances on the roughest road and will reach his purpose, if there be even a little wisdom in it. So, I mean, we all know you have to not deny the fact that there are things to be achieved in this world. The point that we're going to be making here is not to be attached to that. So, Alan Watts, whom everyone should know, there is another intelligence beyond the mind. So long as we have a motive, our actions are not actions, they are reactions. A free man must be an unmotivated man. So we're now going to turn to the Gita itself. Whose actions are all devoid of design and desire for result, and whose actions are all burnt by the fire of knowledge, him the sages call wise. Now, the Chitbhavananda commentary on this is action, actuated by design and desire, has the power to bind the doer. But if the doer of action assumes the attitude that all actions emanate from Ishvara, and that whatever takes place through him as a mere instrument is all the glory of the Lord, he is not bound by action. There is neither agency nor egoism in him. God alone is the real author of all that takes place in the universe. He is called wise by the sages because of his being endowed with this supreme knowledge. Now, this is one of the advantages of being a bhakta. There is someone to whom to dedicate the action and the results and everything that goes along with it, okay? And the constant, let's say, offloading of whatever, personal desires or whatever that you may have, the constant offloading of that eventually cleans it all out, okay? And then one understands firsthand what it means to truly be an instrument. Because there's no personal actuation, no personalness behind it. Something needs to be done, you see it, it needs to be done, do it. Done. You forget about it. There's nothing left. It's gone. Okay. Now, there's an example. There's a train in the switchyard. When you undo the coupling to the engine, all the boxcars stay still. Ignorance is the coupling inside of us. The cars, that is, the desires, no longer act if they are not joined. The engine is free. That leaves us who have gone through this process, wanting to help people, truly wanting to help people, but acting strictly out of compassion alone. There's nothing to win by doing anything for anyone. So there's nothing else to be added. Just the doing of something. Someone is the recipient. Now there is a thing within the Ramakrishna Order. The Ramakrishna Order is basically founded on Karma Yoga. There's sort of a saying that, let's say you do something completely out of compassion, that doesn't mean that that person has to accept it graciously. They can badmouth you, they can call you names, they can do whatever, and they do a lot of times. So the thing of it is, you can't be thinking that you're going to get some kind of praise for what you're doing. You think you did it unselfishly, but when you do get somebody stomping down on you and you feel this self-righteous reaction, you know you didn't do it unselfishly. Okay, so other people are a barometer. They help us kind of know where we are. Their actions, their thoughts, their motivations, their background, etc. Their words. Okay. Responsibility, more or less, to God, the jnani shifts personal identification to the Atman. Once that knowledge is obtained, you don't have to deal with each desire separately. The whole thing is completely cut off when there is no more I association with body, mind, intellect. This path can be and should be followed by both householders and sannyasins, even though some of the quotations refer to sannyasa. They're not referring to someone who's taken vows of sannyasa. They're referring to just renunciation, letting go of things, letting go. Okay, so in chapter 6, verse 2, know that as yoga, which is called sannyasa, for none becomes a yogi without renouncing sankalpa. And sankalpa can be defined as volition, desire, or fancies for the fruit of action. Sankalpa creates formative imagination in the mind about the fruits of action. Sankalpa is the selfish motive behind an action. It is actuated by desire. Sannyasa, therefore, is the renunciation of sankalpa. the selfish motive behind an action. This type of renunciation, this sannyasa, is in fact what is called right action, by the Buddhists particularly. But when one has that attitude, that's like Sri Ramakrishna says, you can't make a false step, because it's not being activated by a personal you. It's being you're just an instrument. It's kind of flowing through you. Good. This is how Sankalpa, sannyasa, and karma yoga become identical. Good concentrated meditation is the reward he gets for his disinterested work. Because really, literally, those things just disappear. They get done and they disappear. They don't leave a residue. Okay, the word that is used all the time in the scripture is the word desire. And in American society nowadays, we seldom use that word really, except if we're talking usually about lust or, something really, something like that. We have a more specific use for it, but their use is much more general. Desire stems from wanting, disguised often as needing. We actually need very little for our sojourn here: food, shelter, clothing, companionship. We surround ourselves with stuff. Why? To remain distracted from the true task, which is to free ourselves from unnecessary entanglements. Unnecessary is the key word. Even Holy Mother had entanglements, but they came along with her position in the family, and she did not allow them to drag her down and become a source of unhappiness. She was always happy. She talked about a picture of happiness or joy inside. Now, dealing with other people. Okay, mostly we're dealing with ourselves, and all the instructions are going to be with dealing with ourselves, because it's really the only thing that we can. But we have to understand that we live surrounded by other people. Yes, we need companionship, but sometimes those things create difficulties for us. So the main thing that I want to mention today, because we're talking about motives, is people who have hidden agendas, like Shakuni did. They actually think you can't figure it out. But if you're observant, if you're really observant, it can be very obvious what this agenda is. Living in a community with people from various backgrounds and even various countries can be very challenging. And I'm not saying that they all have hidden agendas. It's just that everyone is coming from a completely different place, and it's difficult sometimes to figure out where they're coming from. The true motives of our actions, like the real pipes of an organ, are usually concealed, but the gilded and hollow pretext is pompously placed in the front for show. This is a quote by Colton. Let me read it again. The true motives of our actions, like the real pipes of a pipe organ, are usually concealed, but the gilded and hollow pretext is pompously placed in the front for show. So people with so-called hidden motives, they make it look really nice on the outside. You penetrate that. Part of the reason you might want to do that is you learn something about yourself also by doing that. Instead of being, shall I say, victimized by it, take it as a learning situation. Oh, another thing, ambition in our society is much approved. We can't call our society a culture, as it is kind of a ragtag collection of practices from around the world. And ambition is a poison. It has no compunction about using others to gain their own ends, thus unpersoning them and turning them into useful things only. It's a kind of exploitation. This happens a lot, and we also, if we are the brunt of this kind of thing, we can't allow ourselves to be unpersoned inside, okay? It's just like, oh, this is this person's thing. They're projecting onto me something that, I'm not a thing to be used by them. And so I'm not going to take thingness onto myself. That's their thing. Now, in contrast, in verse 18 of chapter 3 in the Gita, it says, he has no purpose at all in action, nor any whatever in non-action, and he has no need of any purpose whatever in regards to any being. The word that they're using here for purpose is artha. Artha has various meanings. It can be wealth, value, the artha that satisfies the acquisitive tendency in people. It's most often used in Hinduism when they talk about the 4 goals of life, the purusharthas, which are all perfectly good and should be followed. Dharma, artha, kama, moksha. Dharma, righteousness. Artha, pursuit of wealth. That is, you have to live. Somehow wealth means prosperity. Kama, legitimate desires. Legitimate desires. There are legitimate desires in society, as long as they don't become like diseases. Okay, you have to support your family, etc., that kind of thing. And then moksha. Once these things are learned properly, then moksha, liberation, is the final, shall we say, achievement. Now, continuing with our discussion about motives, Swami Sri Dharananda explains very nicely, the whole thing rotates around the discipline of not expecting anything from anybody. I build up these expectations and then barter away my peace and freedom. For example, your opinion of what I say or do. Don't become a slave to that. Expect nothing in return. Why do some sadhus not have any disciples? Possibly for this reason. You become a slave to their desires. There actually was, in this hemisphere, I can't remember whether it was Canada or the US, a sadhu who founded an ashram, and then indeed, after a few years, 15 years or so, openly admitted that he totally regretted doing it because they took over. And they're not, shall we say, purified or active. They're supposed to be disciples. They're supposed to be learning. They're supposed to be building themselves up. But instead, they took it as a place to exercise their ambitions. And I'm sure he gave the proper instruction, whatever, but you can't necessarily hasten someone else's development. That's up to them. So anyway, he was rather regretful. So Sridhar Ananda says, you may intensely desire something, but have you made yourself worthy of it? To receive and assimilate it and digest it and be strong, you need to be strong to receive and assimilate and digest it. He's talking about even if you have spiritual desires, shall we say, and it can be expressed in many different ways. Different people have different approaches. But then people complain that they're not making any headway, or they don't seem to be making progress, or they become disgruntled. Oh, I've done so much japam, and nothing seems to be happening, and blah, blah, blah. Well, have you made yourself worthy of it? Have you prepared the ground properly? If you indeed got what you are asking for, boom, just like that, can you retain it? Is it going to maybe derail you? I mean, can you deal with it? Anyway, so Sridhar Ananda gave this sort of warning, okay? You have to take it from where you are, step by step by step. And I listened to a Shaolin monk the other day, and basically he said about judging yourself, kind of like where you are, progressive, how you're progressing and stuff like that. He said, think in terms of decades. And that was absolutely, I could have clapped, but he wouldn't have heard, so it wouldn't have mattered. In the literature, there is another term for motivelessness. That is Shuddha Bhava, purity in motive. And I think that comes fundamentally from, I could be wrong, from the Bhakta literature. There's another word that's used only a couple of times in the Gita for motive, that is hetus, motive or cause. Chapter 2, verse 47. Seek to perform your duty, but lay not claim to its fruits. Be not the producer of the fruits of action, neither shall you lean to inaction. Swami Chidbhavananda says, herein lies the turning point from pleasurable, which is called prayas in the scriptures, to good, the good, shreyas. When duty is discharged, untarnished by desire, clarity of understanding ensues, and also efficiency increases. So that's another thing. We don't talk about duty in the United States anymore. When I was growing up, we kind of did. Everybody knew kind of their place in a family and what they were, what they were supposed to do. And with the breakdown of the family structure, this idea of duty to country, it's interesting because I was born a few years after the end of World War II, when duty was a thing, and to the point now where, do kids even know the word? I don't know. Anyway, that was a side riff. Okay, from the other time that this word hetus shows up is again in chapter 2, verse 49. Motivated action is far inferior to that performed in the equanimity of mind. Take refuge in the evenness of the mind. Wretched are the result seekers. I love that word, wretched. I just like, yeah. Freedom from desire, wanting, and craving is real freedom. Now, Sri Nisargadatta, who I would like to use more frequently, but I've kind of sidestepped him because I used to use him a lot, was a jnani who lived in Bombay, passed away in the 80s, I think, sometime. And he was a great jnani, and there are many books written about his conversations with people. His advice on what to do: trace every action that is your action, not somebody else's action. Trace every action to its selfish motive and look at the motive intently until it dissolves. Discard every self-seeking motive as soon as it is seen, and you need not search for truth. Truth will find you. Now, I want to do a little side thing here from Buddhism, because Buddhism has what they call motivations for doing good. Loving kindness includes compassion, equanimity, which we've been talking about, and a desire for the well-being of others. Second, there's three of these. Second is right intention. This motivation comes from the Three Noble Truths that Buddhism has, which teaches that all things are impermanent. If you remember that all things are impermanent, then that intention becomes momentary. It gets you through the action, and then it's gone. Third, right understanding. This motivation comes from seeing that all things are impermanent again. Okay? We understand, when understanding grows, we become even more, shall we say, avid about going along this path. The path disappears behind you as you go forward. It slightly reveals itself a little bit as you go forward, but then it disappears behind. Now, I referred to the Noble Truths, just to remind people, the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism. Life is suffering. Suffering is caused by craving. Suffering can end, and there is a path to end suffering. These are, they should be written in gold everywhere, you know. There is an end to suffering. Now, by the time we get to chapter 6 in the Gita, which is kind of teaching us how to meditate more from the Jnani or Raja Yoga perspective than Bhakti, but let's. It applies across the board anyway. I'm going to have two different translations of this because it's chapter 6, number 24 and number 25, verse 24 and 25. And I'm going to use Swami Chidbrahman Bhavananda first and Winthrop Sargent secondly. Number 24 in chapter 6. Abandoning those desires whose origins lie in one's intention, all of them, without exception, and completely restraining or subduing the multitude of senses with the mind, little by little he should come to rest with the intelligence that is the buddhi. His mind having been fixed in the self, he should not think of anything. And the second Sargent translation of verses 24 and 25 in chapter 6. Abandoning without reserve all desires born of sankalpa, that is imagination, will, resolve, intention, and curbing in by the mind all senses from all sides. With his intellect set in firmness, let him attain quietude little by little. With the mind fixed in the self, let him not think of anything. That sounds, let him not think of anything. That all people then always start to think, well, what does that mean? Well, if you are concentrating on the inner self, let's say the inner light, okay? There's nothing to be thought, because thoughts generally, they can be pictures, but we generally think of them as words, okay? It just is, that light just is. So concentrating on that inner light being a representation of the self, our true self, or Atman, if you want to use that word, any kind of thought would be an intrusion. Okay? So we're talking about just like a pure visualization. So this was Sri Krishna's advice to how to meditate in that manner. Again, from chapter 6, verse 19. As a lamp in a windless place does not flicker, this is the simile used for the disciplined mind of a yogi practicing concentration on the self. Chidbhavananda says, the flame of a lamp in a place perfectly sheltered against the wind is as steady as the flame of a lamp in a picture. When the mind of the yogi is completely sheltered against the wind of desire, the self in him shines in its original splendor. He is to identify himself with that unbroken consciousness. So I want to stop now and ask for some questions before I do the final bit. Just see what people have to say. This is all a build-up actually to Karma Yoga per se, which perhaps I'll do next time or one time anyway.
more of a comment on what you concluded with. You know, the method of concentration that you alluded to. So they are actually two kinds, and I've practiced where the thoughtlessness. So the Buddhist take on it, and I think it's also mentioned somewhere in the Gospel or whatever, is that you sit quietly and you watch your thoughts without reacting, and over a period of time, depending on it, it just goes away. So, and on a personal note, what I've found is over the years is that all of that actually stems from purity, which again Ramakrishna talks about, and you talked about Nisargadatta Maharaj, and I'm a great fan of his. And so that is the other way of questioning as to anything that is arising, good or bad, to whom does it arise. So it's also on the same lines of Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi.
For those online, I can't possibly repeat all of this. But anyway.
I think those, I guess the point was that there's the Vedantic way and there's the slightly different Buddhist way of practicing.
Right. But let me make a caveat. Okay. When you're just watching the mind and the thoughts, you're best not to look right at them, because they have a tendency to take you off. Okay? So actually you're kind of looking through them. They're there, but you're not paying attention to them per se. You're kind of looking beyond them. Yeah, okay. So there's where we are. Okay, very good. Yes, so he was alluding to a different type of meditation, slightly different, that frequently the Buddhists practice, which is vipassana. Okay, anybody else? Did I cover Sankalpa enough? Different types of dharma she's talking about.
Yeah. One would even think that, if you're looking at the Bhagavad and the idea of how Krishna seems to express dharma to Arjuna, especially in the Gita, Arjuna's complaint about, I'm about to go here and kill my family members, but Krishna's expressing to him about just allow the Dharma to me, in essence, and just do what is the process of your life as a true Shakti.
Right. She's referring to Arjuna's dilemma about dharma in the Bhagavad Gita, and Krishna kind of saying, "Leave it to me."
It seems to suggest that there is a level of non-freedom that Krishna is leading Arjuna to, in an understanding of how one takes action in life. It doesn't seem to be a sense of freedom. It seems to be just a pure idea of surrender, as opposed to an actual choice taken. It seems to suggest that there really isn't a choice.
She's talking about choice, and being is surrender a choice that is surrender to the divine. Is it a choice, or what's the opposite, or what's the alternative?
That's the interesting thing to me. It doesn't seem to be a choice. I mean, it seems to be the best non-choice you could ever make in life.
Okay, it's a non-choice, she says, and that is correct.
In fact, Rama Krishna seems to suggest that as well in the gospel.
Well, yes, once you get to that, when you get to that point, you see the futility of everything else that you've tried that didn't work. And therefore, you kind of abandoning all desires, you abandon those, you just abandon that and say, yeah, okay, the Lord is taking me that way. Or, the universe, if you don't want to think of the Lord, whatever. And you let go of everything, every other alternative. And you surrender to that. And in doing that, they say, you discover your own true being, because it's no longer connected to anything external. External used in a very, what can I say, normal sense, which on the spiritual path you wouldn't necessarily use it in a normal sense. But, yeah. So you let go of everything. And that doesn't mean that you stop doing the proper things. There are things to be done. If you're in a family, there are things to be done. There's a job to do. There's, bills to be paid, and people to be taken to the hospital, and you name it. There's things to do. But it's done with a sense of, it's not really I who's doing this. But you're not thinking that. You're actually thinking nothing. Try to think nothing, as you do in meditation, as you try and do in meditation. Because the mind, like even the Sargadatta says, he kind of lets you know that, the mind is basically, you don't need it most of the time, really. You need it when you're speaking with somebody. But then as soon as he would stop speaking with somebody, he would just go into his blissful self. The mind wasn't being called for anywhere. That's the condition or situation that we're trying to work toward. To be that instrument, and the thing that we normally think of as I isn't even there. And if you examine the I, really, really examine the I, it isn't even a thing. It isn't even real. It's a construct. It's not even an actual. It's not an existent. Okay? It does not really exist. We have constructed it. We've created it, helped along by the people who raised us and whatever. And in actuality, there is no real thing that we call an I. Anyway, okay, so any other questions? Okay, I'm going to just conclude here then. In conclusion, we are all crippled in some way, yet by following the instructions as to how to live properly, we can cross the mountain of this world and discover our true self. All we need to do was told to us by our Holy Mother in 2 words: desire, desirelessness. Desire, desirelessness. So, let us seek the assistance of the great ones And I'm going to do a verse from the Gita Dhyanam. Om Parasaraya Vacha Sarojan Alam Amalam Gita Taganto Takam Nana Kesharam Harikata Sambodhana Bodhitam Loke Sajana Shatpader Aharach Pepi Yamanam Muda Bhuyad Bharata Pankajam Kalimala Pradvamsina Shreyase. I tell you, these glasses are not great. May this lotus of the Mahabharata, born in the lake of the words of the son of Parasara, that is, Vyasa, sweet with the fragrance of the meaning of Gita, with many stories as its stamens, fully opened by the discourses on Hari, the destroyer of the sins of Kali, and drunk joyously day by day by the bees of good men in the world, become the bestower of good to us. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.